Late one evening in the quiet hills of Galilee, a fire burned against the encroaching darkness. Jesus sat perfectly still with his inner circle. The flickering firelight danced across ancient parchment, illuminating Hebrew letters that carried the weight of centuries. They had just finished reading a terrifying passage from the scroll of Exodus, a passage where the deity known as Yahweh commands the Israelites to slaughter entire cities. Men, women, children, livestock, everything that breathes, leave absolutely nothing alive. The violent words hung in the night air like suffocating smoke. The disciples sat in stunned silence. Peter finally looked up from the scroll. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he stared at his master. In a low, disturbed whisper, Peter asked the question that had secretly haunted humanity for generations. Master, why is the God of our fathers so incredibly violent? Why is he so utterly jealous? Why is he consumed by such unending rage? You teach us about a Father of infinite light, a Father of unconditional, eternal love. But this being in the scroll, this does not feel like love. This feels like unadulterated wrath. Jesus did not answer immediately. He reached out and closed the scroll slowly, deliberately. He looked deep into the eyes of Peter, then John, and Mary Magdalene. And in the quiet of that Galilean night, he said something that would eventually get him crucified, something the institutional church would spend the next 2,000 years violently trying to erase from human consciousness. He looked at them and he said, "That is not the Father. That is not the monad. The God you are reading about in those texts, the one who demands endless blood sacrifices, the one who drowns the world in floods, the one who commands absolute genocide and dares to call it holy. He is not the creator of your soul. He has a name, Yaldabaoth, the Demiurge, the chief Archon.
And he has been pretending to be the Most High since the very beginning of this corrupted material realm.
This earth-shattering teaching never made it into your modern Bible. When the organized church compiled the canonical texts in the 4th century, they systematically removed every single reference to Jesus, exposing Yahweh as the Demiurge. They burned the sacred Gnostic Gospels. They relentlessly hunted down the mystic teachers who preserved this crucial distinction. They did this because they fully understood the absolute danger of this truth. If the masses of Christians knew that the God of the Old Testament, the very God they have been blindly worshiping and fearing for millennia, was actually the chief Archon, the entire global religious system would collapse in an instant. There would be no more inherited guilt, no more paralyzing fear of divine punishment, no more endless cycles of sacrificial salvation, because that angry, jealous, insecure entity demanding blind obedience was never God. He was the great impostor. And Jesus Christ incarnated into this density specifically to expose his matrix. Tonight, you are going to learn the exact, undeniable evidence that Jesus used. The specific biblical passages, the exact words, and the undeniable psychological characteristics that mathematically prove the God of the Old Testament is not the monad. He is Yaldabaoth. Before I reveal the 5 undeniable proofs hidden in plain sight, sitting on the bookshelf in your home right now, you must understand why this distinction is the most important realization of your entire existence. The God of the Old Testament and the true monad are not 2 faces of the same cosmic coin. These are 2 completely different entities operating at entirely opposite frequencies, with entirely opposite natures and entirely opposite agendas for your soul. The God of the Old Testament is overwhelmingly jealous. He admits it freely.
He violently demands exclusive worship and constantly threatens brutal punishment for merely acknowledging the existence of other deities. That is not the behavior of an infinite creator. That is profound insecurity. That is a fractured entity that desperately fears competition because, deep down, he knows he is not actually supreme. The true monad does not possess the capacity for jealousy. Jealousy requires a state of separation. Jealousy demands a fundamental lack of something. But the monad is everything. It is the pleroma, the absolute fullness of all that is. There is absolutely nothing outside of the monad for it to be jealous of. Infinite consciousness does not compete with anything. It simply is. The God of the Old Testament is consumed by rage. He drowns the entire population of the earth because he deeply regrets creating humans. He rains down apocalyptic fire on cities. He commands mortal armies to slaughter infants in their sleep. The violence is constant, relentless, and manipulatively presented as righteous justice. But the true monad operates entirely beyond the low frequencies of wrath and punishment. The monad does not violently destroy what it emanates. Rage is a deeply reactionary emotion. The monad does not react to the illusion. The monad simply emanates eternal light. And yet, you have felt this deeply unsettling truth your entire life. Deep down in your gut, in the quiet moments of your soul, you always knew something was terribly wrong with the Old Testament God. The sheer cruelty did not make any logical sense. The absolute obsession with blood, burning flesh, and blind obedience did not feel holy. It felt controlling. It felt dark. It felt parasitic. And every single time you dared to question it in church, you were immediately silenced. You were told to simply have blind faith. But listen to me very carefully. That profound discomfort you felt, that hesitation, that sinking feeling in your chest, that was not a sign of weak faith. That was your own sovereign, divine spark, recognizing an Archon frequency. You were reading the literal words of the Demiurge, not the monad. And your core energetic blueprint knew the exact difference. Only the pneumatics, the chosen ones who carry the eternal light of the pleroma within their spiritual DNA, can actually perceive this massive contradiction. The Hylics, those completely asleep in the material matrix, read the Old Testament and see absolutely nothing wrong. They see brutal power and they blindly worship it. But you read those ancient passages and something ancient inside you instinctively recoils. It recoils because you did not come from the Demiurge. You originated from the monad. And you instantly recognize when you are being manipulated about your true cosmic origin. Now, prepare your mind. I am going to show you the exact evidence, the 5 specific proofs written directly in the canonical Bible itself. Not in hidden, buried books, but in the book sitting on your shelf right now. These are absolute proofs that expose the Old Testament God as Yaldabaoth, the chief Archon. These are literal admissions of guilt from the entity himself. Proof number 1. His very name is jealous. Open your Bible to Exodus chapter 34, verse 14. The text explicitly says, "For you shall worship no other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God." I want you to read that again. Whose name is jealous. This entity does not just experience occasional feelings of jealousy. Jealousy is his fundamental identity. His name is his core frequency.
and jealousy is absolutely not a divine attribute. Jealousy is a biological, low-dimensional emotion rooted entirely in fear, rooted in profound insecurity, and rooted in a deep consciousness of scarcity. The true monad possesses zero scarcity. The monad is completely infinite. There is literally nothing to be jealous of because there is absolutely nothing separate from it.
But the Demiurge is intensely jealous because he fundamentally knows that he is not the Most High. He knows about the pleroma, and he is absolutely terrified that if human beings ever discover the true eternal light within themselves, they will immediately stop worshiping him. They will stop feeding him. So, he demands exclusive, undivided devotion. Jesus pointed directly to this passage and said, "That is not the eternal Father speaking. That is the desperate Archon trying to maintain psychological control over his energetic farm." Proof number 2, he explicitly creates evil. Turn to Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. Listen very closely to the actual words spoken by this entity. "I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things." The Demiurge openly and proudly admits that he creates evil. He explicitly, undeniably states, "I create evil." The true monad does not create evil. The monad is pure, unadulterated emanation, pure, blinding light. It does not operate within the deceptive matrix of duality. Good and evil are artificial constructs of the lower material realm. And right here, in the book of Isaiah, he is openly confessing that he is the grand architect of both sides of the game. He is maintaining the entire parasitic system of opposing energetic forces: light versus dark, good versus evil, God versus Satan. All of it is a perfectly designed closed-loop illusion. It is designed to keep your consciousness trapped in endless conflict. But Jesus taught that there is absolutely no war within the true monad. There is only eternal unity. Proof number 3 is the foundation of the entire Archon control system. He demands continuous blood sacrifices. This horrifying obsession is woven seamlessly throughout the entire architectural structure of the Old Testament. The book of Leviticus is essentially a detailed, deeply disturbing manual for ritualized, industrialized animal slaughter. It contains incredibly specific instructions on exactly how to kill. And repeatedly, over and over again, the ancient text states with chilling satisfaction, "The smell of burning flesh is a pleasing aroma to the Lord." Pleasing. He deeply enjoys it. He strictly requires it in exchange for forgiveness. Ask yourself, why would the supreme creator of the infinite universe need the smell of burning animal flesh? The answer is terrifyingly simple. Because Archons feed on death energy, they literally harvest the immense fear, the agonizing pain, and the vital life force energy that is forcefully released when a conscious being dies violently. This harvested energy is called louche. The Archons have built entire global systems to generate and extract this dense energy on a massive scale. And the ancient sacrificial system was one of the most brilliant harvesting mechanisms ever designed. Convince millions of people that God actually requires blood, and you instantly create a continuous stream of vital death energy directed straight to the Archons. The true monad does not need blood. It is entirely self-sustaining. This is exactly why Jesus stepped forward and violently abolished the sacrificial system. He flipped the tables in the temple and said, "I desire mercy, not sacrifice." The demand for death was always the signature of the Demiurge. Proof number 4, he punishes innocent generations. Look closely at Exodus chapter 20, verse 5. This is embedded directly within the famous 10 Commandments themselves. It says, "For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children
unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Generational punishment. Think about the profound injustice of this concept. You commit a sin, and in return, your innocent children suffer. Your unborn grandchildren suffer. Not because they actually did anything wrong, but simply because of your actions decades prior. That is not divine justice. That is a highly sophisticated psychological control mechanism. It is deliberately designed to create perpetual, inescapable guilt and perpetual energetic debt.
This brilliant manipulation keeps you intimately tied to the Archon system across multiple lifetimes.
The Demiurge wants absolute dominion over your entire lineage, because he knows that if he can keep your mind trapped in the constant fear of inherited sin, you will never dare to question the architecture of the system. You will spend your entire life desperately trying to earn your way out of a spiritual debt that you never actually owed. Proof number 5. He is completely ignorant of what exists beyond his own lower dimension. This final proof is mathematically devastating to his claim of supremacy. In the book of Genesis, the Demiurge creates the lower material world. As he does, he repeatedly steps back, examines it, and proudly declares that it is good. But notice what is missing. He never once mentions the pleroma. He never once acknowledges the existence of the monad, because he truly does not know about them. He arrogantly believes that he is the absolute beginning of everything. He loudly declares, "I am the first, and I am the last. Before me there was no God formed." But the hidden Gnostic texts reveal the pathetic truth. He is completely wrong. He is not the eternal source. He is merely an emanation, and a deeply flawed one at that. He is the result of Sophia's error, and he is so profoundly limited in his cosmic awareness that he genuinely, deeply believes that he is the supreme God. That profound ignorance is the absolute signature of the Demiurge, a false God who does not even know he is false. But Jesus knew. Jesus descended directly from the true pleroma, far beyond the dimensional reach of the Demiurge. And he looked at the religious leaders of his day and boldly stated, "I came from the Father, I go to the Father, and you know neither me nor the Father." He told them directly to their faces, "You do not know the real God, because the entity you have been fiercely worshiping all these years is an impostor." These 5 distinct characteristics,
consuming jealousy, deliberate creation of dualistic evil, endless demand for violent blood sacrifice, psychopathic generational punishment, and profound ignorance of the higher monad. These are the undeniable, energetic signatures of Yaldabaoth, the grand ruler of this heavy material realm who forcefully trapped divine, eternal sparks inside cages of flesh and violently convinced them that he was their loving creator. When you pick up and read the Old Testament from this moment forward, you will see it completely differently. You can never unsee this code. Every single time Yahweh violently demands total obedience or ruthlessly threatens terrifying punishment, you will instantly recognize the frequency. That is not the voice of infinite, unconditional love. That is the desperate voice of the Demiurge, violently maintaining his global control system. And the most beautiful truth is this: you are no longer subject to his laws. You are no longer trapped in his frequency. Because your consciousness now knows exactly what he is. Jesus gave his disciples a powerful, foolproof tool, a frequency test, a profound way to know in an absolute instant whether they were dealing with the true creator or the false architect. Listen very closely to this ancient test.
Any spiritual teaching, any voice in your head, any massive religious system on earth that operates through the mechanisms of demand, threat, and control, that is inherently demiurgic. But any teaching, any whisper in your soul that clearly reminds you that you are already divine, that you are already entirely whole, that you are already permanently connected to the infinite source, that is the ultimate monadic truth. Jesus said, "The true Father does not demand anything. The true Father does not threaten you with fire. The true Father does not require a single sacrifice from you. The monad simply is, and you came directly from it. You are simply a fragment of God,
temporarily experiencing the illusion of separation, so that you can consciously remember the glory of unity. One system violently screams that you are fundamentally broken and desperately need external fixing. The other system quietly reminds you that you are entirely divine, and you simply need to wake up from the nightmare. And I want you to feel what happens inside your body the exact moment you truly recognize this massive distinction. The heavy burden of religious guilt lifts immediately. That crushing, suffocating weight of original sin dissolves into nothingness. Because you suddenly realize that the angry, demanding deity was never actually your God. It was merely an Archon playing a game of cosmic deception. The paralyzing fear of divine punishment instantly evaporates. You are finally remembering your true, ancient origin. You came from the monad. You literally are the monad, intimately experiencing itself in a temporary, beautiful material form. And that profound act of remembering shatters every single energetic chain the Demiurge ever wrapped around your soul. Religious control mechanisms cannot touch your mind when you deeply know that the entire foundation is mathematically false. You are not rebelling against the Most High God. You are powerfully, sovereignly refusing to worship a cosmic impostor. And that specific, conscious refusal is exactly what activates your DNA and sets you completely free. Recognize the illusion. Refuse the false authority. Rise back to your monadic frequency. I must give you 3 critical warnings before we close this transmission. First, absorbing and integrating this forbidden knowledge will fundamentally separate you from traditional Christianity. Most well-meaning Christians are unknowingly worshiping the Demiurge. Do not force this sacred teaching on anyone. It acts as a vibrational magnet. It only finds those whose consciousness is fully ready to awaken. Second,
Consciously recognizing the Demiurge does not mean you must aggressively reject every single word inside the Bible. The authentic teachings of Jesus are still beautifully hidden within the text. Those are pure, high-frequency, monadic teachings cleverly embedded within deeply demiurgic texts. You simply read them differently now. And third, the Demiurge is still the active ruler of this dense material realm. Consciously recognizing him does not remove his influence over human governments, but it permanently removes his energetic influence over you internally. Because the moment you stop worshiping him, you immediately stop feeding him. You stop voluntarily giving him your vital energy and your constant fear. And without your energy, he has absolutely no jurisdictional claim over your sovereign consciousness. This is the singular teaching the institutional church feared more than anything else in human history. If the global masses of Christians suddenly realized that the jealous deity demanding blood was never the true Father, the entire massive religious system, built entirely on fear, would completely collapse overnight. You do not need to appease an angry, volatile God. You do not need men in robes to intercede for your soul. You do not need to perform rituals or offer sacrifices to earn divine favor, because that specific God was never your God. He was the Archon jailer, and the real God, the true infinite monad, needs absolutely nothing from you. You came from it. You are it. If you are finally recognizing the Demiurge tonight, if the heavy, ancient veil is lifting from your eyes, I need you to do 3 things right now to anchor this frequency into the physical realm. First, go to the comments below and type these exact words. I am monad, not Demiurge. Type it as a sovereign declaration. Claim your true identity and break the energetic contract. Second, subscribe to the Divine Codes channel right now, because advanced, forbidden teachings on how to practically exit these demiurgic control systems are coming very soon. You do not want to miss the next transmission. Third, like this video immediately so the algorithm is forced to push this frequency to other chosen ones, helping them discover the horrifying truth about the Old Testament God before this sacred knowledge gets suppressed again. Do all 3 right now. Your physical declaration matters in this realm. Then tonight, when it is quiet, open your Bible and read the Old Testament with entirely new eyes. Every single demand for blind worship, every single terrifying threat of violent punishment, every single bloody sacrifice, see it exactly for what it truly is. The Demiurge desperately maintaining his planetary harvest system. The chief Archon frantically pretending to be the Most High. Jesus came to this earth to expose this very matrix. The church tried to hide it from your bloodline for 2,000 years. But the code has been broken. You know the truth now. The God of the Old Testament is not the true Father. He never was. You are the monad. You are not the Demiurge. Wake up.